During his life, Billy Graham's ministry and crusades touched more than 215 million people in nearly 200 countries. And today, we will actually have a visual representation of just how many lives he impacted.
More than 2,000 people from all over the world invited to his funeral at Graham's childhood home at the Billy Graham Library here in Charlotte. NBC Charlotte's Ariel Placencia is in West Charlotte with a look at the plans for today's events.
It's a chilly and breezy morning here at the Shuttle Lot. We're waiting with all the other media, waiting to head over onto the Billy Graham Library. Today is the day. It's been a week and a half of build-up leading up to today's funeral, where we will celebrate and honor the life of Billy Graham. Today, the world coming together to mourn. 2,300 guests personally invited to Reverend Billy Graham's private funeral. A list that includes the president, former presidents, 100 international delegates from 50 countries around the world, and people of many different faiths. President Donald Trump, Vice President Mike Pence, and their families will be seated about 10 minutes before the private funeral starts at the Billy Graham Library around noon. The funeral will take place under a 28,000 square foot tent in the library's main parking lot, the tent paying homage to the Reverend's past crusades. Graham's son Franklin will give the funeral message and speak from the same pulpit his father used during his crusades. Other speakers will include family members and religious leaders from all around the world. The ceremony will last about an hour and 20 to an hour and 30 minutes. And following the funeral, Graham will be buried next to his wife Ruth in the library's prayer garden during a private ceremony. And although the funeral is invite only, if you are interested in watching, head on over to our website, WCNC.com. We'll also be bringing you on-air coverage from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. For NBC Charlotte, I'm Ariel Placencia. Now back to you.
Now, the President of the United States and the First Lady will be here in Charlotte today. As we've mentioned, they're honoring the life of Reverend Graham. So will the Vice President and his wife.
NBC Charlotte's Ruby Durham joins us now live this morning at Charlotte Douglas International. So, Ruby, it's a busy day at the airport with so many people flying into Charlotte to honor the Reverend.
Ben and Carolyn, you're absolutely right. Some 2,000 people will be here today for the funeral, so that means delays here at Charlotte Douglas. So make sure you check that flight status. As for the funeral, it's happening today at noon. So President Trump, Vice President Mike Pence, and their wives will be here in several hours. Around 11:30, they'll be at the Billy Graham Library to pay respects and to meet privately with Billy Graham's children and the family. And then shortly after that, around 11:50, they'll be seated for the start of the funeral.
The funeral today, just down the street at the Billy Graham Library, will draw more than 2,000 people, all by invitation only, with a guest list including the nation's president, first lady, vice president, and his wife. And it's not just the who's of presidential names in attendance today. Earlier this week, former presidents George W. Bush and Bill Clinton flew into Charlotte to visit Reverend Graham's casket and pay their respects. And as for Reverend Graham laying in honor inside the Capitol Rotunda earlier this week, President Trump spoke on the legacy Graham left behind.
Everywhere he went, Reverend Graham delivered the same beautiful message. God loves you.
The president calling Reverend Graham an ambassador for Christ who changed America and the world. And in a statement last week, Pence, an evangelist himself, called Graham one of the greatest Americans of the century. Graham had the ears of presidents and the eyes of millions on him, and his family members said the beloved pastor always remained humble.
Billy Graham carried his message around the world. But his heart, as Franklin will tell you, was always in America.
Ben and Carolyn, the president, vice president, and their wives will leave immediately after the funeral. And I'm told President Trump is not on schedule to speak. Coming up in the next half hour, President Trump's tweets about Billy Graham since 2012. I'm reporting live for NBC Charlotte. Ruby Durham, back to you.
Ruby, thanks. Reverend Graham's funeral expected to impact drivers for several hours today, starting with the morning commute. If you plan on taking Billy Graham Parkway, of course named after the Reverend himself, you'll most certainly need an alternate route today. It's been shut down since 9 o'clock last night.
NBC Charlotte's Hannah Welker is live at a busy intersection on the Parkway, Tryon and Billy Graham. And Hannah, you're going to show us how to get around all of this traffic block.
Yeah, exactly, Carolyn. You could actually see the police officers behind me, CMPD blocking with barricades. You will not be able to get through from Tryon to Tyvala all afternoon. This is a site that you'll see until the end of Billy Graham's funeral. The road named after Reverend Billy Graham himself closed today in his honor, a safety measure and a solemn gesture to give Graham one last ride to his final crusade.
Some people may have concerns about traffic. We have staffed up wonderfully for the police department.
CMPD staffing all 1,950 officers today to account for any and all needs surrounding the funeral.
Everyone's working on Friday. All days are canceled on Friday. No days off on Friday.
The Parkway closing at 9 p.m. last night from South Tryon to Tyvola and remaining closed until late this afternoon, perhaps even later. These maps on the City of Charlotte website showing alternative routes, drivers being detoured through South Tryon to Tyvola. If you need to get to the airport today, your best bet to Charlotte Douglas off of 77 is to take 485 to the Wilkinson exit. From I-85, authorities say to take Little Rock Road. Both roads lead to Josh Birmingham Parkway. These road closures having such an impact, it's even causing Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools to make adjustments. We're being told 40 school bus routes are affected. Bottom line for anyone moving in and around Charlotte today, police are on high alert.
Yeah, and drive slowly if you are approaching these intersections. These police officers just trying to do their job. But Rachel Rollers in the traffic center tracking these detours. Rachel, are there any delays because of these road changes?
Hannah, thank you so much. Taking a look at the map, you mentioned 485. Now, this is a different section, but just keep in mind, near the same area, 485, this rollover crash really slowing things down at Steel Creek Road. Not too far from the Charlotte Douglas International Airport, as you can see. This is the airport here, that crash working right here, and this is the closure of Billy Graham Parkway. Just to put it into perspective for you, as Hannah mentioned, that will be closed until after the funeral events. So that's definitely going to cause some issues for commuters. This is a live look of Interstate 85 at Billy Graham Parkway. You can still make your way through 85, of course, but Billy Graham Parkway, again, closed until after the funeral. Now, again, our coverage of Reverend Billy Graham's funeral will continue this morning. We'll have nonstop live coverage starting at 11 a.m. right here on NBC Charlotte. Ben?